Sometimes the most amazing business stories aren't on the front page. They're buried deep inside these, well, really dry corporate documents. Today, we're going to crack one of those open to uncover a really brilliant move: how a classic, old school industrial company is making a very clever bet on a greener and a much, much cheaper future. So, right away, here's the big question. Why would a chemical manufacturer that's been around for half a century suddenly go out and buy a solar power startup? I mean, on the surface, it makes absolutely no sense. It's like a total odd couple. So, what is really going on here? Let's start digging for clues. All right, first things first, let's meet the two main players in this story. They really couldn't be more different, but their futures just got tangled up in a pretty unexpected way. So, on one side, you've got Khaitan Chemicals and Fertilizers, or KCFL. Think big, established, traditional, heavy industry. And on the other side, KSKIS Solar, a tiny little startup founded just back in 2022. This is old school industry meeting new age energy. The puzzle just gets deeper. Why this specific startup? And why right now? To figure this out, we have to zoom in and look at the deal itself. The clues, they're all hiding there in the fine print. It's time to follow the money and the legal details. And here's our first big clue. It's the size of the purchase, 26%. Not 25, not 30, exactly 26. Now, you should know, in the world of corporate deals, a number that specific is never, ever an accident. It's a signal. And that number, 26%, is basically the key that unlocks this entire strategy. And here is why that number is so important. Owning 26% triggers something called the group captive mechanism. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is like a private power club for big companies. The law basically says if you own at least 26% of a power plant, you can use the electricity it makes directly for your own factories. It lets you skip the public grid, and that can save you a ton of money. So that 26% stake, it's not just an investment, it's a golden ticket to their very own private power supply. So what's the price for this golden ticket? Well, it's just under 38 lakh rupees. For a company as big as Khaitan, that is almost nothing. It's a rounding error. So this isn't some huge, risky bet. No. This is a very precise, surgical move, a tiny investment meant to unlock absolutely massive savings down the line. Okay, and here is where it gets really wild. Get this, for the 2 full years before this deal happened, what was the turnover for this solar company? 0. A big, fat 0. You heard that right. Khaitan isn't buying a company with customers or a track record. They're buying an empty shell. A startup with nothing but potential, and it's a potential they're about to build out themselves. Okay, let's put the pieces together. We've got the 26% stake, the super low price, a startup with 0 revenue, and this special captive power role. Now, it's time to connect the dots. This is the aha moment where it all makes sense. So here's the genius of it. Khaitan actually spelled it out perfectly themselves. This one small deal accomplishes 3 massive goals all at once. First, they get their own private supply of renewable energy. Second, they get to slash their energy costs by not relying so much on the pricey public grid. And third, they get to massively lower the carbon footprint from their factory operations. It's a win-win-win. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This is a direct quote from their corporate filing. They want to, quote, reduce dependency on grid power, optimize energy costs, and reduce the carbon footprint. This is a straight-up strategic play to get control over one of their biggest and most unpredictable expenses: energy. But that still leaves one question. Why do this right now? Well, if we take a quick look at Khaitan's recent financial health, the rest of the story just clicks into place. Just look at this incredible turnaround. A year ago, they posted a pretty big loss, almost 17 crore rupees. But this year, they've swung all the way back to a 1 crore profit. So after a really tough stretch, the company is finally back on solid ground. And what's the very first thing they do? They make a smart, forward-looking move to lock in lower costs for the future, to make sure they stay profitable. This is all about protecting that hard-won stability. So when you boil it all down, this isn't really just some going green initiative. It's a brilliant financial strategy, and it's hiding in plain sight. They're using a green solution to build a much more financially stable and ultimately more profitable business for the future. So the deal is signed, the strategy is crystal clear. So what happens now? Well, maybe the most impressive part of this whole thing is just how fast it all starts to pay off. Yeah, this isn't some vague 10-year plan. This is happening right now. As soon as Khaitan's cash is in, KRSK Solar is required to start supplying power within just 2 months. 2. That means this investment starts paying for itself in cheaper electricity and a cleaner conscience almost immediately. And that leaves us with one last big question. By turning such a tiny investment into what is essentially total control over its energy future, has Khaitan Chemicals just created the blueprint for other old-school industries to follow? Is this a savvy path to a future that's both greener and more profitable? All the evidence seems to point to a resounding yes.